I am so glad you're back with us for this episode of the podcast. Cassie McConnell Kelley is the wife of Lady A's Charles Kelley, and she's joining us today. I have known Cassie for years. She is beautiful inside and out with the most generous heart for others. Cassie is very open about her profound journey as a young wife and mother supporting her husband's battle with alcoholism. Charles recently celebrated 2 years of sobriety. Congrats to him. And Cassie shares a conversation with me about the impact of alcoholism on families while taking a pretty raw and honest look at navigating life in the music industry amidst prevalent alcohol culture. Cassie is a testament to the power of love, of support, and vulnerability. And if you've ever been touched by addiction, this is the conversation that you need to hear. Here's episode number 67 with Cassie Kelly. Cassie, I definitely want to start with how we met, because I remember I was covering the reality TV show, which is really one of the first of its kind, wasn't it?
Totally.
Trailblazed from American Idol and The Voice, but Nashville Star, which, if those of you who may remember, that's where Miranda Lambert, Chris Young, Betty Jewell, those are some of the bigger names at the time that I remember coming from that show. But I was covering it as an entertainment reporter, and I just remember seeing you the first time and thinking you were so strikingly beautiful, and just like, okay, is she one of the contestants? Who is this girl? And it turns out you were a working girl. You were the publicist for Nashville Star. What do you remember about those days and that particular assignment and job?
Gosh, I remember it was once a week, summer of 2008, and I guess it was our live taping on NBC, and I worked for the PR company who was doing the PR for the show. And I just remember it being fun. I think I would have been 25.
Yeah.
And it just was like a fun job because we were a community, because we were there together every week.
Yes, because it went on for, I don't know, 8 or 9 weeks probably, if not longer. And it was all summer long. We came every week, and the same people were either covering it or working it. And it really was fun to be behind the scenes. And at the time, it was quite innovative in what they were doing.
Right. And I just remember too, like, you had Connor was like a little boy and, we'd see pictures of him. Yeah. And it was just like, it feels like forever ago.
I have a picture of Cooper and John Rich together, like while we were in a commercial break or something like that. At the time, you had not yet met your husband, Charles, right? Or no, you said you had, but you were on a little break.
Yes, we had met, we'd been dating, and then that particular summer, we were on a break. We had broken up. At that time, I didn't know we were on a break. I thought we were just broken up. We met January 2007. My sister was dating their keyboard player. Lady A had been a band for 4 or 5 months. Okay. Like had just kind of...
It was very new.
Very new. They weren't signed. I mean, they were just very new. And the guy who was playing keyboards with them at the time, my sister was dating. And I had just moved back to Nashville from New York, and, was kind of just like getting in the groove of living here again, because I grew up in Nashville, but had just moved back. And she said, I'm going out to dinner with some friends tonight. Do you want to come? And I said, sure. I was at that dinner with them, and Charles kind of walked in late, and we just like locked eyes across the table, and like that was it.
Wow.
Like it was truly just like an instant connection. But, I grew up in Nashville, and my mom was in the music business, and, he's like, I'm doing the music thing. And I'm like, you and everyone else, like, good luck. Hope it works out for you.
You're like, I know what that's about. No, thank you.
No, but we just truly had this like instant connection. And I'm thankful that it was before he was signed or, doing he was in his band, but they, hadn't gotten really kicked off doing anything. And he was in town, so we got to really know each other and be together for a while before he really started his career.
Right. He wasn't Charles Kelley of Lady A when you met him, because that wasn't really what the...
And traveling all the time, I mean, it would have been very hard if he was like, okay, I'm home for 2 days and then leaving again. And, just to kind of get to know each other at that time would have been really hard.
Yeah. So you grew up in Nashville, you mentioned, and you have a really interesting background, and your mom's career we talk a lot about, what did you get from your mama on this podcast, but I would guess that what she did for a career, which I really want to hear about. I want to hear stories of like what you remember. Who were you around as a youngster that the rest of us would be like, what? But I'm sure that impacted you and your sense of style. And I mean, if you're not familiar with Cassie, she really is the queen of fashion and interior design.
Right
and yes, but what I love is that you are. My favorite thing is a Cassie on a red carpet. Like, what's she gonna wear? What's her look gonna be? But here you are, as real as can be, straight from a workout in your St. Jude t-shirt. Yes, but that's just so who you are, and there's no pretense, and we love that. So,
thank you.
So tell me about your mama and what she did, and what you remember about those days.
So my mom was a stylist. Still actually works with a couple people, but has clothing stores in Nashville now. But she was a stylist, a wardrobe stylist when I was growing up, and she worked with, so many people. She worked with Martina McBride. She worked with Faith Hill. She worked with Shelley Wright. She worked with, I'm trying to think of
Wow.
She, in the 90s in country music, like if you name someone, she probably worked with. She worked with Joe Diffie. She worked with, I remember a really funny story that she told about Joe Diffie, just captured like who he was so well. And she said she was, working with him for the first time. It was a video shoot or something. And asked him like, what do you like? What do you like to wear? And he goes, oh, just go to any old fat boy shop. So like she was on that end, but then she also, worked with Martina and Faith and like did, more high fashion stuff with them. And
do you remember like being at fittings or them coming into this? Would she have a store at the time or not till later?
She didn't have a store at the time,
Okay.
but I remember having to go do like returns with her for sometimes. And it was just like her car was constantly just packed to the brim with clothes and having to like go to the mall and do returns. And because, online shopping wasn't a thing.
Yeah, think about how much that industry has changed.
I know.
Yeah, wow.
There was always the energy of country music in our home. And, I got to see also a little bit of what the pace of that life was like. Because she was, that was also back when everybody did a big video shoot for stuff. And, photo shoot, people had money to like.
Yeah, big budget photo shoots. Yeah.
And record labels, there was a lot of record labels and there was a lot of people that worked at record labels. And so I would go on shoots with her sometimes. And it was a really fun time.
And then what did you end up studying in college? Did you want to pursue fashion?
I didn't. I studied journalism and mass communication. Okay. I wanted to be like a football sideline reporter. I was super into sports and I wanted to, do that, be a sports reporter. And then I kind of quickly learned that, as you know, if you want to do TV, you have to start out in a very small market and, so I didn't necessarily, I wanted to live in New York after college. So
what fed that passion? Why New York?
It was always my favorite city. When I was little, I modeled when I was younger in the summers. My mom would take us up there and we modeled in New York.
Okay. So at a different level than here in Nashville, you were actually traveling to model.
Yeah. So we would live up there for a couple of summers in a row and work and then, come back to Nashville and go to school. And so I loved that. And I just felt like I wanted to live there.
Is there any type of ad or we would ever be flipping through an old magazine or something and see a product that you were modeling?
Well, I was on the cover of several magazines, national magazines, when I was like 5.
Oh my goodness, I'm not surprised at all.
I was, but I worked a lot up there and I don't know, I think I just was always like kind of a rule follower. And so I was, I think as a child model, it's not always who like fits the image so much as who can just behave and be on set for, longer periods. I did work a lot and, I liked it.
Yeah.
My sisters came up too and, they worked some too, but I remember my little sister specifically, she was just like, this is not the vibe. So,
How many siblings are there?
I have 3 sisters and 1 brother.
Okay.
My mom and my dad had 3 daughters. So my older sister, myself, and my younger sister.
You're the middle?
I'm the middle.
Okay.
And then they got divorced, remarried, and each had my mom and my stepdad had my brother, and my dad and my stepmom had my sister.
You were in New York for how long?
I was there for a year.
Okay.
And ended up wasn't really ready personally to leave, but I was making like no money.
Which does not work in New York.
No. And I think I was making like $26,000 a year. And, you know, New York taxes are a lot. So I think my paycheck every 2 weeks was like $800
oh my goodness.
in New York.
Could
and
you
my
even
rent,
have rent?
I know. I lived in a 1-bedroom apartment with 3 roommates. So there were 4 of us.
In a 1-bedroom
In a
apartment?
1-bedroom apartment. So I loved it, but I got offered a job back in Nashville and was like, you know, I'll move back to Nashville, build up my resume, save some money, and then move back to Manhattan in a couple years when I can maybe like get a better job and make some more money. And a month after I moved back to Nashville, I met Charles.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So that kind of changed the plans. There was no more moving back to New York
Nope.
in the future. So at the time you were working for the publicity company, do you think that experience of being on that side of things with artists and everything that helped really contributed to kind of how you approached being married into that lifestyle?
That's a good question. I think, you know, again, it just was another component that informed me about like what life looks like as an artist. And it also gave me appreciation for how hard you have to work as an artist. You know, I think a lot of, I don't want to speak for, you know, other women who are married to artists, but, you know, if you don't sort of see all of the pieces that go into what it takes to have a career, you might either be resentful or not understand like how much work is really going into it and how many people are working on behalf of that artist to like make a career happen. So it definitely gave me that perspective, which I think is helpful.
And even knowing like what to expect. For example, this is just kind of a cute story, but Leah just walked her first red carpet with Connor at the ACMs. And she's like, now what are we doing? Now what?
Who are these people?
why are we going to talk to all of them?
Right.
Which, you know, she handled beautifully and gracefully, but it was a new experience of, okay, what exactly does that mean, you know, to do? But you had been around you had walked artists probably down red carpets.
That was my job,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, and when you're on the PR side of it, you know, you are walking your client down the red carpet.
Yeah.
So
yeah. When you guys first started dating, he was in Lady Antebellum at the time, now Lady A. Could you have ever imagined what they would become? Like the road that they were on, how wide it would actually get?
Gosh, I know. I think when you're young in your 20s, like you just aren't thinking about the future anyway. And I think it was just like fun, but I had no idea. I mean, the week that we got married, they had their first song go #1, which was Run to You. And from there, it just was like,
wow. That was the week of the wedding, the first #1. He started off with a bang.
I know. And it was so funny when they found out they had a #1 song, they were on their bus broken down on the side of the road. So like that doesn't speak to just what the music business is.
Exactly.
You know,
it is, that certainly tells it's not the glam that we necessarily think it is, or the work it took to get there for sure. So I want to hear about kind of how you used your love and your passion for fashion and interior design, and now, I mean, you're in the midst of renovating your own home, flipping another home, all of these things that you have talents and skills in, but you ended up launching kind of a fashion brand at some point, right? Was that Womanista? How did that come to be?
So it was kind of like the OG time of blogs.
Yes. Even before like Instagram and everything, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was definitely before Instagram. It was, I think I launched Womanista in very beginning of 2012.
Do you remember where you got the idea or?
Well, part of it was I had always had a job and been working in PR. And then there got to be a point where it was very hard for Charles and I to like have a marriage and to see each other, because he was working, you know, on the weekends touring. And then my job was working
really
during the week.
have a 9 to 5, yeah.
Right. It made it harder for me to have a real 9 to 5 job. And so I retired from PR but wanted a creative outlet still.
So you were looking for something to kind of keep your identity and have your own thing, which I think is so important, no matter, I mean, if you can't even identify with, the music and the touring and that lifestyle, I just think no matter what it is, my husband's in healthcare, but it was always so important for me to have my own thing, my own outlet. So I can totally relate to why that mattered to you.
Right. And I think especially when your husband or wife travels for work, and they're gone a lot, it's like you really need to cultivate your own life in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So, it kind of just spawned out of a place of wanting to have a creative outlet. And I love to write. Journalism was my major in college. And we were going to a lot of cool places, and I felt like, and I love to travel. And so it kind of mixed everything that I liked, and could write about it. And so I just started a blog. I remember the first couple blog entries that I wrote, I'm like, oh my God, this had 50 views. I cannot believe this.
50 people. You sound like me starting this podcast. Oh my goodness, 50 people listened to this week.
But that was so exciting for me. It was like this, and I think that is when you're kind of on the right path doing something, is when even just from a commercial standpoint, you still get excited about just tiny wins, because that still felt very fulfilling to me. So in 2015, I partnered with a digital media company in Nashville and to relaunch it as a women's lifestyle site, not just my personal blog. And so we relaunched Womanista, and it got huge. I mean, it grew huge. That when you're working with people who know what they're doing. And we sold it to CBSI in 2018.
Wow. Oh my goodness. So then were you completely hands off? Okay. So you just handed it over. And the timing for that was probably pretty good. You had a 2-year-old, right?
So yes, when I signed the deal to partner with this lifestyle company or digital media company to make it the lifestyle blog or website, was the same week I got pregnant with Ward.
Oh, wow. Oh my goodness. Which perfectly leads us into that transition of your journey to motherhood. And it wasn't really a simple one. It wasn't what you would have expected.
No. I mean, it took us a long time to get pregnant with Ward. I think we were married for 7 years before he arrived.
Oh, wow.
And, obviously God's timing is perfect for everything. Yes. I'm so thankful that I didn't have a little baby at the beginning of Charles's career. I mean, I don't know that we would be married still.
It would have been so hard.
It would have been so hard. It just the time apart and the travel for one would be hard. We didn't have any money then, so I couldn't go, especially if I'd had a baby. But we got to do so much together. I mean, we got to sort of ride that roller coaster and, get shot out of a cannon together, and before we were parents.
Yeah. Yeah. Did it feel like that, being shot out of a cannon? The way after that first number one, Run to You hit, and then Need You Now, and I mean, just all the success that you guys had. Once the ball started rolling, did it feel like a boulder going down a hill?
It totally did. It did. And it was exciting. It was really fun, but it was also exhausting. And, there was just no time. Again, we got married, and the week we got married, Run to You went number one. Need You Now was the next single. So that came out in August. So a month after we got married. And then,
wow.
So our first year of marriage was psychotic.
I can only imagine.
I mean, it was really tough.
The business side of things, that probably kind of overwhelmed the marriage, I would guess, at the time.
Oh, fully.
How did you find some balance or work your way through that?
Therapy. I mean, truly. It was, you've never done it before, marriage or having success in the music business. And, what I think a lot of people maybe realize, but once you are kind of hitting your moment in the music business, you got to say yes to everything. Because or at least that's sort of what you feel like.
Right.
Because that's your moment. So everything was really, hitting for Charles and Hillary and Dave. And I mean, they did Oprah because the Oprah show was still on.
My goodness.
They did Saturday Night Live. I mean, they did everything, but you're gone and traveling and on the road all the time and you're exhausted. I mean, I look at kind of the people who are just like, really, this is their moment right now. And, you know, you see the other side of what that probably feels like and how tired they are.
Yeah, you have a whole perspective of that.
We were the first to get married, and Hillary and Dave weren't even dating anyone at the time. So it was also tough in that aspect of Charles trying to be like, I need to have my wife or do whatever. Yeah. And neither one of them, you know, had a significant, or they had maybe a boyfriend or a girlfriend, but it was
without
totally
that,
different.
you can say yes to more. You don't have, you know, that wife at home that needs attention, that need, you know, that.
Totally. Yeah. And you don't have a marriage that you have to, you know, keep living.
Yeah, exactly.
But then poor Hillary was the first to have a baby, and then
she was the first.
You know,
she
had
jumped
to endure,
right in, didn't she?
Yeah, all of that toughness, you know, without Charles and Dave understanding of what that means to have a child.
Right. What is life on the road now like? Let's see, Kelly's about to have a third, right? So 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 kids in between all of you is what it's going to be?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
I know. It's so different on the road now that Ward's in school full time, because his school's very flexible about him traveling and leaving, but he doesn't want to leave. You know, it's like, Mom, I can't miss that. You know, it's science day. We're going to do whatever. So that makes it harder. So we definitely don't go as much.
Right.
But, you know, I mean, there was definitely a time where we were on the road most of the time when he was a baby.
You guys all three, tell me about like lifestyle of Lady A for fans who are just probably interested in how y'all do that. Do y'all have your own bus? Does each family have their own now?
When they are in a season of touring, we each have our own bus, but there's other, like Charles, Hillary, and Dave each have a bus. And then there's a couple of band guys that stay on ours, and then maybe like a couple of crew people on Dave's. Like, so it's
spread the crew and the band out.
Everyone else is kind of the band and like, you know, PA and tour manager and stuff are kind of spread out, and then crew has buses too.
Okay, gotcha. Well, it's quite the operation out there on the road.
But it's not just me, Charles, and Ward on the bus.
Do you see any musical talent in Ward?
He loves music. He likes EDM music.
Really? Oh my goodness. I don't know
where that came from.
Like, how did he even get exposed? I love that.
Honestly, I have no idea.
That's so funny.
I don't know. And we have a friend Jesse Frazier, who's a, you know, songwriter, producer, and DJ. He had like an extra, you know, DJ kit, and he let Ward, you know, use it and like learn on it. And he was super into like a DJ season for a while.
That is so fun.
You know, and we also want him to know, I mean, he's a member of our family, and the stuff that's important to him, we want to honor too. I mean, we just want kind of our family to feel like everyone here matters.
Yeah.
And we're not just all doing whatever Charles is doing, or we're not all doing whatever Ward wants to do. We're like, you know, trying to honor what matters to each person in our family.
Summertime for our family means a lot of travel, and yes, most of the time Tucker does get to tag along. We spend a lot of time in our RV, and that means lots of walks and activities with Tuck. Before we head out, we bathe Tucker with Coat Defense's Sensitive Skin Shampoo. It smells so fresh without being loaded down with chemicals, and his coat stays really soft. We always make sure to pack the Coat Defense Daily Preventative Powder as well. This powder that we just sprinkle on his coat and paws acts like a dry shampoo and works to eliminate odor and repel dirt. Tucker's friends at Coat Defense are offering you 15% off to try any of their awesome products. You can visit coatdefense.com and use the code MAMA15 at checkout. As you guys know, I am a huge fan of BAREFACED and have been using their skincare consistently for about a year now. My go-to this summer is the Summer Staples Toning Pads, Liquid Gold, which is their vitamin C, and SPF. I recently learned that vitamin C can make your sunscreen more effective, and that's why this summer I am making sure I include it in my everyday routine. Some vitamin Cs can be a little drying, but BAREFACED is a microemulsion with coconut esters, so it is extremely hydrating. And of course, I never go without about my SPF. If you're not wearing a daily SPF, investing in skincare is kind of a waste. My personal favorite is the tinted SPF. It is a universal tint derived from iron oxides and not only provides a natural looking glow, but also serves as an extra defense against those dark spots. These products are your summer skincare staples, ensuring your skin stays healthy, nourished, and protected. You can get 15% off your first purchase of summer staples using the code MAMA15 at barefaced.com. One of the things that I love about you and Charles is that you really have used this platform that the Lord has given you guys to try to help in ways that you can. And I love that you wore your St. Jude t-shirt, maybe even accidentally today, I don't know. But one of the things that you do, among things we probably don't even know about, but your involvement with St. Jude and this incredibly beautiful, wonderful event that you hold every year. How did you get involved with them? Was it through Charles as a musician? And of course, they're so in tune with the music industry.
I mean, I can cry every time I talk about St. Jude. It's so special to me. So the country music is very connected to St. Jude, which I think is beautiful. Randy Owen, who's in Alabama, a long time ago, really started their Country Cares radio-a-thon, and has imprinted on, really started the trend of to much who's given, much is expected, and in country music specifically. So a lot of country artists do a lot to give back for St. Jude. And the second I walked through those doors, there was so much palpable joy in that place. Made me cry. That I knew I just wanted to do everything I could to help there in any way I could. It's just such a special place.
And that no family ever pays a dime. It just blows my mind.
Not one penny. And the care that they have for the entire family, because a lot of kids, while maybe their sibling is getting treatment there, they're there too. And they just make such a point to take care of the whole family.
I mean, you guys do more than write a check. I mean, a lot of families could write checks, but you hold an event. Is it every year that you?
It's every year.
Oh,
so
my goodness.
It's called Curated, and it's a big fundraiser in the fall that we do. And it was an idea that Allison Buchanani, the same girl who initiated our wives trip, had come up with. Started as partnering with a chef and some, Nashville musicians to just do a nice dinner. And it's just grown. I mean, I think last fall with, I don't know, maybe 90 people in the room, we raised $1.8 million.
Oh my goodness.
Which has just been insane. I mean, every year it's just blows my mind how generous our community is and, how they truly show up and care for these kids. It's one of those nights where you're like, God, I'm just leaving this in your hands and, lead us where we need to go. Yeah. And it just, people
That's
show
amazing.
up.
And I think it's a beautiful example of how God's used your gifts and talents, which is one, to set the most incredible tablescape you've ever seen, ever. And, your gift of hosting and hospitality and all of that. And then to be able to take those gifts and use them for such good. I know that must just be incredibly special.
Well, it feels, again, like that's all fun for me too.
Right.
So it feels like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I get to just do this and enjoy it, and it gets to matter.
So I want to talk a little bit about something super brave that you and Charles have done. You guys have walked through a sobriety journey in a very public manner. Kind of want to get your perspective on the how and the why of choosing to share your story, which I think was incredibly brave. I just respect you so much for doing that.
Thank
because
you.
Even though, sure, in the public eye, things may come out and stuff, you can just choose to stay behind the door, walk your journey. But you guys have walked your journey with a goal of hopefully helping other people. And I think that's incredible.
Well, I first want to, address the fact that I think that alcohol culture in specifically the entertainment business, but really in country music, is everywhere. And so I think it's important to vocalize that you don't have to drink to have a good time. You don't have to drink when you go to a country concert. I mean, I just as much as anybody likes to have, a glass of wine or a beer or whatever and at a concert, and that's great. But, I think that the idea that, you have to do it is really we need to change the culture around that. Or that you can't have fun without alcohol.
Right.
But, going back to Charles went into treatment in end of June 2022. His 2-year soberversary is coming up in, this weekend.
I was going to say, yeah, we're right there, aren't we?
Right there.
Oh, my goodness. Congratulations.
Thank you. So he went into treatment end of June, early July in 2022. And, at that point, alcohol, as it can do, had just truly wrecked everything in our lives. We were on a trip with friends in Greece. He ended up flying directly from there to treatment. I thought I was going to fly home, file for divorce. I'm done here.
When you talk about being at the end of the rope, you were there.
I was there.
Had you been to that point before, leading up to that?
About 6 months before that, there was a time, so December 21, where it was really bad. And I was like, I just can't do this anymore. And I remember saying the prayer, God, heal this or help me leave, because I can't do this anymore. And I called a friend, and she was like, I think you just need to know what your options are. Because I think I said, he either needs to go to rehab or I need to call a divorce attorney. I don't know what to do. And I think she said, I think you just need to know what your options are. So why don't you call this attorney, just see what it looks like.
If this is where we get to.
This is where you go, just so you know. The saving grace at that point, in hindsight, it's saving grace, but that it was going into the week of Christmas and we just couldn't get in to see each other. He just decided at that point, he was like, I have to stop drinking. So he tried by himself.
Just a quick cold turkey by himself.
And, what I have learned since then is that's virtually impossible to do. Recovery happens with people alongside you. And then he did that just really white knuckling it. And the other piece of that is, even if you can do it, it is so hard. And you don't have to do it that way. So, he ended up drinking again, and then just very quickly it got right back to where it was, if not worse.
Yeah. Throughout your marriage, how many times had y'all had the rehab conversation? You trying to urge him to go?
A couple years prior to that, Hillary and Dave actually approached him about it.
Almost
first.
An intervention?
They didn't necessarily do an intervention, but they just said, you gotta figure this out. And that went over terribly. So bless them.
Did you know they were going to do it?
I didn't.
Okay.
They kind of just said, listen, either you got to get your stuff together or we're not going to be a band. Which thankfully and then at that time too, he also kind of pulled it together for a little bit, but alcohol is a progressive disease and it always comes back stronger. So there were times where he either stopped drinking for a period, or tried to, or there were a lot of starts and stops.
Yeah.
Usually when you go to rehab, it's you've tried a lot of times in a lot of different ways. Everybody does I'm just going to do beer and wine, and I'm going to not do whiskey anymore. And it always, all these bargaining things of I can control this. Usually people have gone through every option that they can go through before they realize, oh, wait, I cannot control this. I am completely powerless over this. And so by the time he actually did go to rehab, it was he chose it. He fully, no one made him.
And he kind of needed to get to that point, right?
Absolutely.
Where it was 100% him.
Yeah, I think, and I can't speak for everyone, I can just speak for us. But I think when you go because someone is making you go, sometimes people aren't ready to receive that. You have to get to the place of true surrender, powerlessness, acceptance over that, that this cannot be part of my life if I want a healthy life.
If we were to look at a slideshow, let's say, of you and Charles at events and different things through the years, are there times where you can look at that and know that you were just putting on a smile?
100%. The fights we would get into because, he would get too drunk or whatever, I was embarrassed or, the thing about alcoholism is people's stories might have different details, but they're always the same, I think everyone around us knew he was always going to drink too much, and, you know, okay, how do we stay 2 steps ahead of this and, you know, make sure it all is okay. And they're definitely, I mean, I can look back at pictures. Sometimes it's like too painful too, because I knew exactly where my mindset was. And it was just, you know, in a dark place. And you know what, part of why sharing this message is so important to me is through Charles's journey, I learned about Al-Anon, which is a 12-step recovery program that I have been in since he's been sober, and it has completely changed my life. And I didn't realize that there were tools for the family, for the people around the alcoholic. I just, you know, I think a lot of people think, oh, this person's just going to get sober and everything's going to be great. And that
like you're just going to stand by and wait on your family to go back to normal.
Yeah.
But no. I think you talked about it in the CBS special where you said that when you showed up at rehab for your portion of family week or whatever they call it, when they let you know this is going to be just as much work for you, that you were devastated.
I was so mad. I was like, what? This guy has the problem. I don't have the problem. And then you realize, oh, wait, maybe I do have some things that maybe need changing. And that is the gift of where he went. It's called Cirque Lodge, and I am so thankful for them. But they truly try to bring in, I mean, it's the family disease of alcoholism. And they try to make sure that the family can, if they're willing, can be involved in all, because it's recovery for everyone. You know, you start to just think about the ways that I have been affected by Charles's alcohol use, and just like how it affects your life and your reaction to things. And, you know, you start to unwind those and you realize, oh my gosh, I do have just as much work to do to recover from this.
And so you as a family member actually had your own 12-step program that you walked through?
Still do. Yeah. It's like one of the most important things in my life.
Wow. And so you as well are celebrating 2 years.
Yes, I am. And, you know, a lot of 12-step recovery programs are spiritually based programs. And that is, I think, can be hard for people if, you know, religion has been difficult for them in the past, but it is the most loving, acceptant, like come as you are. You know, higher power for me is God, and higher power for other people can mean different things. And it's just, you know, you walk into that room and there's people of all walks of life, and we're all there for the common goal.
How often do you go now?
I go once a week.
You go once a week to a program, and he goes separate to a different program?
Yep. He goes to a different 12-step recovery program, and he, you know, sometimes he goes on the road if he's out of town a lot. He has a great men's group here that he loves. He goes to other meetings that are in town. There's a meeting he goes to that's a lot of musicians, and
awesome.
But it just has been, the recovery community has been so great to us, but like, not just because we are who we are, whatever, but like the recovery community is such a gift.
That's amazing. Was this, would you say it was a more difficult journey as a musician who's part of a band? Because they were about to go tour or had to step back in the middle of a tour, I can't remember. But there's more people than just your family that rely on Charles. That's a lot of pressure.
You know, and that just speaks to the kind of people that Hillary and Dave are, truly. I mean, they cared more about the well-being for Charles than they did about what their career looked like. And they, I mean, they're just the best people.
That's amazing.
Just hands down. Their families are the best people. You know, they just truly like allowed us the space to walk where we needed to go and to get our feet under us in recovery, and for Charles to really find his footing. And yeah, he went to treatment, and they were supposed to start their tour that August. And, you know, part of the reason that he actually was vocal about that he was newly sober was because they were going to have to postpone. They decided to postpone this tour to, you know, give him time. And he was like, we got to be honest. If people are going to think we're not selling tickets, people are going to think we're breaking up as a band. Like, we got to tell them why we're really doing this.
Was that hard because of our innate pride for him to come out and say, like, do you remember those conversations where the two of you said, okay, we're going to come out publicly and say, this is where I am and what I'm doing?
That never, I can't speak for him, but I don't think that it ever felt scary for him to do. I mean, I think his pride more was tied to if people thought that like they weren't doing well or if they were breaking up.
That makes sense. Yeah.
But a lot of people around him didn't want him to do that because he was newly sober. And it was like, if you announce this, that you're putting it out in the world. But in hindsight, that's been a really good accountability tool for him. Everyone knows that he is sober. And, when we're at let's just say an event or CMAs or whatever, I mean, nobody's like, why aren't you drinking? That the ability to be honest in that aspect has been helpful.
I bet.
Because people know. Before I was in my program, would have thought, oh, I gotta, help him and I have to not drink to help him. But that's actually the opposite.
I think that's interesting. Yeah. Tell me a little bit more about kind of that perspective of you don't have to necessarily walk the same actions that or make the same choices he's making.
Right. I think the whole point of recovery for the family member is I was living in so many ways just to thinking 12 steps ahead, trying to mitigate what might happen for him or trying to make sure he didn't do that, trying to control him so much that the point for me now is to make my own decisions for myself. The point for me now is to live my own life. Regardless of what choices he might make, he is responsible for his own choices, and I am responsible for my own choices. And, whatever that looks like, I want to make the best choice for myself. If I decided that alcohol isn't working for me and it's maybe keeping me from being the person that I want to be, then I can choose to stop drinking. But if it's not a problem for me and I want to have a glass of wine every once in a while, whatever, then that's a choice I can make for myself. But it's not because of some fear of what he might do. And, that people ask me too, is it going to trigger him if I'm drinking around him? And, that's for him to decide. If he's in a situation where people are drinking and it's uncomfortable for him, it's his responsibility to remove himself from that situation. It's not other people's responsibility to make decisions based on him.
Wow. You sound so wise. I can tell you've just learned so much through this journey.
I have. Yeah. I have. And it's just in every way. I mean, I joke that I went to Al-Anon because of my husband and I stay there because of motherhood.
Yeah. Tell me about mothering and parenting through those difficult days. I mean, he went to rehab. He was gone for a month. Ward saw his daddy drinking too much. What was the impact on Ward?
That's probably still evolving. He was young. He was 6 when Charles went to treatment. But there were definitely times where Charles would come home. He would have been drinking too much. And I could tell Ward was like, I don't know what's happening here, but my dad is different. And so I don't know what to do with that. Or there were times where I would be, I'd be making dinner and with the expectation of having dinner as a family, he would walk in the door, he would be too drunk and it would just have to pivot of okay, forget this. We're not doing this anymore. Did you just
stay ticked off a lot?
I was ticked off a lot and I also was just on eggshells 100% of the time. And when you start digging into how that affects you, it's hard. I wasn't a good friend. I wasn't a good mom probably a lot of the times because I was so hyper-focused and hyper-vigilant on trying to make sure Charles was okay.
Yeah.
And that part of my recovery is no matter what Charles is doing, I have to still be who I am. I have to be the mom I want to be. I have to be the friend I want to be. I still have to be the wife I want to be.
Yeah.
The empathy that you have for someone struggling with addiction. For me, what changed was when I went to Family Week when he was in rehab. And, I was able to, by the grace of God, separate the addiction from the man and see how the man was suffering. And this wasn't a moral failure of his. This is a disease that he doesn't want to have. And he compulsively is choosing this despite horrible results every time. So he's not trying to be this way.
Yeah.
And he's not trying to be a terrible husband. He's not trying to be a shitty bandmate, you know?
Right.
So the fact that I was able to really separate the man from the disease was huge for me. Because also now the husband that I have is a completely different husband. A gift that I didn't know marriage could be like this. I didn't know how like a partnership could be like this. I didn't know we had never had that.
Wow. I'm so happy to hear the happy ending. But it sounds like it's all so good that it's worth it to make that daily choice.
It is. It's, and I think it's so scary to think of, especially in our culture that's very alcohol centric. Yeah. And you don't realize how much everything is centered around alcohol until someone who's living in your home is sober. And you're like, people are just like making plans based on drinking.
Right.
Everything.
Yeah.
But I think so people are very fearful of like, oh my God, how am I going to be social again? Am I going to even have friends? How am I going to live without drinking?
Was that a concern for him?
I think it had just gotten so bad that like it didn't even matter. It didn't matter.
Right. I get it.
But before, for sure, all the kind of starts and stops, it's like, well, I don't know how I'm going to go on stage without a drink. Mm-hmm. I don't know how I'm going to go to any event, it's hard to imagine what life is like without it because you've always done it that way.
Were you ever worried about him going on stage? Like meaning you were backstage and knew how much was going on before then him going out?
Yeah. And part of, the repair he's had to do with Hillary and Dave is like they didn't know who was going to show up on stage some nights. Mm-hmm. And, that anxiety for them of like, oh, what's he going to say? Is he going to forget all the, there's just so much that every single person around an alcoholic is affected.
Right. I do think it shows so much. I mean, you and I know that they're incredible people, but the grace that they've shown, the support for him and, really prioritizing his well-being and his health and your families. I think that speaks so highly to Dave and Hillary.
Totally.
Incredible people.
They are.
Yeah. What advice do you have? Or, I can just imagine, a young mom that is dealing with, a husband of knowing, at what point, like, what do you kind of wish you had known early on? Because I imagine this was a many years long journey.
Yes. I wish I had known that there was another way for me, that the recovery community was out there. And that's why I just am so vocal about like, no matter what's happening with someone in your home that's an alcoholic, you can choose a different way. And that doesn't mean you have to get divorced. That doesn't mean you have to completely uproot your life. There's help for you. And whether the alcoholic is drinking or not, you can find peace. And I wish I had known that. And I would have for sure started my own recovery journey years before.
Right. And that makes so much sense because I do think that when you're married in that relationship, even you needed to talk to an attorney to see what your options were because I guess you just assumed it's probably either stay with him or leave him.
Yep.
And it's not necessarily.
No.
That's the hope you can now offer with your perspective.
Completely. Yeah. And, we have the gift of sobriety in our home now for him, but relapse is always a possibility. And I think I have tools now. I know I have tools now that, God forbid, that happen. I'm not immediately calling a divorce attorney. Maybe I will. I don't know. But I know that there are tools that's not the only options.
Yeah. That's awesome. I'm just so happy for you. And,
Thank you.
And from the outside in and knowing when he made the commit to sobriety, I'm so thankful for that, for the health of your family, but just getting an insider's glimpse into how good things are now and what you've walked through and how you've taken care of yourself and to make sure you can be the best mom and best wife that you can be through this. Yeah.
And I think one thing I've learned too through, a lot of community in this is, I've met a lot of people who were children of an alcoholic parent, and a lot of their resentment is actually to the other parent and the way that they behaved as a crazy person. I was a crazy person, and like, God, my dad was acting that way, but it was because he was drinking. My mom was a crazy person because she was a crazy person, And so I think that is so important too, if you are a parent, to make sure that you are taking care of yourself. You're doing what you need to do to live the life that you're living in a healthy way and be that kind of parent for your kids.
Yeah, the best gift you can give your child for sure is taking care of yourself.
Yes.
Yeah. That's
Amen.
So true. So true. So tell me something exciting that you have personally coming up, maybe Lady A and Charles related, but I know you're in the best stage of motherhood and, all the he's really fun and you're learning, you're bragging about how, incredibly intelligent he is and smart and what his passions are. Isn't that just the best to watch your son develop into who he's going to be?
Yes. It is so fun. He's just like, I couldn't have dreamed up this child,
I love that.
He's just so special. And to get to be his mom, I just don't feel worthy half the time. It's like, I can't keep up with him. He's just so fun and wonderful. And, and I think about too, like he's 8, 10 years until he's out of the house. And I just want to be so intentional about that time and just soak up every minute with him. He's an only child. So, of course, we're like, what are you doing?
A lot of extra attention. Like,
get out of here, people.
That will only get worse, let me tell you.
Yes.
And you just tend to cling tighter knowing you've only got that many more summers or whatever. But then they're pushing away at the time that you're clingy. It's so hard.
I think we're really in a sweet spot now. And I'm so grateful to get to sort of know it and acknowledge it. Of like, he's 8 in maybe 4 years. He's really going to not want to hang out with us. He does now. And to really just like enjoy that time.
Yes. He'll still cuddle up with his mama.
Totally. He calls me mommy still.
That's the best.
I know. Yeah. And so we're just, I think that walking through Charles's sobriety and recovery has really taught me like nothing is promised and nothing is so bad that it can't be bettered and nothing is so good that it also won't go away. So I truly just, that one day at a time, just is my daily mantra of like, what am I doing today that is, giving life to me, giving life to my family, giving life of service to whoever I can help, and, just show up as my authentic self.
As you did today, which I love.
Yeah.
This has been such a special conversation. Thank you.
you.
I really appreciate you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.